Welcome to Cyber MAYnia, cyber talks with the brightest minds in cybersecurity. Discussing risks, AI, emerging threats, workforce challenges, and more. With your host, May Brooks.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cyber MAYnia. With me today is the incredible Chris Hadnagy. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well. How you doing, May?
I'm pretty good. So, as usual, we always start these podcasts the same way, with you telling us a little bit about you, yourself, and your crazy story in cybersecurity.
Okay, well, I'm Chris Hadnagy. I'm the CEO of Social Engineer LLC and the Innocent Lives Foundation. And I started the company in 2010, and I started the nonprofit 7 years ago. So my company, we focus on human-based security. That's it. And the nonprofit, we focus on helping law enforcement around the globe locate people who traffic children and create child abuse material.
That is such an amazing background in general. And we found out just now, a few minutes ago, that we actually started in this industry with the same instructor. Can we share his name? Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so Matti Aaroni, who was the founder of OffSec, Offensive Security, he was actually my instructor for penetration testing 20-something years ago. And then later on, you worked with him. So
yes,
it's pretty
and he
amazing.
was my instructor. I took the course online. I fell in love with it, and he offered me a job, and I worked for him and learned from him, and it was maybe one of the best experiences of my life.
Amazing. So it's such a small world. It's always funny when you talk to people from all over the world, and suddenly you find out, oh, we have the same instructor, or we have the same. Yeah, it's very funny. So you said that you focus both on your nonprofit and the company. You focus on the human side of cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. What initially sparked your interest in this specific field?
That's a great question. So I was working for Matti, and during that job, I realized I really stunk at coding. I mean, really bad. You know, here we are writing exploits, and doing things, and I'm having notes of simple Python commands I can't remember. Once he had me write 1,538 bytes of shellcode, and I used a calculator, and he said, "Why didn't you write a Python script?" I'm like, oh. Right? Like 50 hours later, and I'm like, why didn't I write a Python script? Like, I'm such a moron, right? So anyway, we get these audits, these tests, and I was reading Kevin Mitnick's books, and I was like, I wonder if there's a way to do that stuff legally, like, and not go to prison. So we would ask, can we send some phishing emails? Can we send some, make some calls? And company would be like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. And it would work. Like, I am Paul from IT, I need your password, and people would just give it over. So I had one guy that actually said to me, this was the big change. He said, okay, what do I do? So you hacked me with people. Now how do I fix it? And I went, beats me. And he went, if I went to my auto mechanic and my mechanic said, I said, hey, what's this noise? And he goes, it's your brakes. And I said, can you fix it? And he went, no, I'd never go to that mechanic again. And I went, that's a really good analogy. So I came back and I bought like every book I can find on psychology, neuroscience, nonverbals, facial expressions, influence, persuasion. I started reading everything, just consuming and highlighting in the books and writing notes. And then next time I do a phish, I'm going to try Cialdini's principle of authority. Bam. Then I come back and write about it. And that formed the framework. So that was in 2009. I finished the framework and I put it online. And 2 or 3 months later, Kevin Mitnick's publisher called me, and she asked me to write a book, which I was like, no, I'm not going to write a book. I'm nobody. And Maddie's like, you're a moron. Go write the book. And I'm like, okay, I'll go write the book. And I did. And that was Social Engineering, the Art of Human Hacking. Came out in 2010. And when it did, it kind of took the world by storm. And that's what formed this company. It was people calling me and asking me to consult. I got invited to go speak at the Pentagon. I was all over the globe training and teaching. So I started this company in late 2010 and never looked back.
That's amazing. When you mentioned the book, and I have the book, I read it multiple times. I want to ask you, in the past 14 years since the book was originally published, how did social engineering evolve, or how did your understanding of social engineering evolve?
Oh, I love that question. So let's go with my understanding of it first. So when I first wrote that book, I tried my hardest to put a lot of science in it, but I would say that I didn't do a good job in that book. So 14 years, I've really delved into the science to the point I hired a young woman, a PhD. This is her background in psychology, understanding science of how humans make decisions. And she works with us so we understand why those attacks work, how they work, what makes it work. So I would say in 14 years, one of the big changes for me is actually understanding human behavior and understanding why all of us are vulnerable to social engineering. And then what's happened in the market over the 14 years. So this is interesting. If you go back through human history, social engineering attacks have always been the same. The only thing that's changed is the medium of how they're delivered, right? So now with AI out there, deepfake technology being used to fake voices, to fake pictures, to fake video. I was just talking with an AI expert, and he said in the last month, they've advanced AI so much that you can make a moving video of someone just from their LinkedIn photo. Like you don't have to have video anymore. Just a LinkedIn photo, and I can make you say and do anything I want. That is scary. Right? When you think about the level of attack.
It's so easy to get a sample of someone's voice.
Yeah. I mean, especially people like you,
us. Yeah.
Podcast and speaking everywhere. Right? That's what I mean.
Exactly.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It is. It does make you wonder how, well, not just about the new threats, how will people be able to detect the difference between real data and fake data? Not just in cybersecurity in general. I think it's going to be a huge issue. And I always talk to my kids about it, how they can actually detect if something is real or not, and not to assume that something is real just because it's on the internet. Yep. And there was actually a huge, very public issue in Israel about a month or two ago, where one of the politicians, she's not very well liked, and she said something about the movie Matrix and said, it was created by yeshiva buchers, by very ultra-Orthodox Jews. Well, it wasn't. And the entire Israeli media and a lot of people on social media were all over her.
Oh, no.
And she was actually, again, she's not very popular. I don't like her. I don't like her politics, but I really appreciated how she handled it. She went on Twitter, X, and completely owned it and said, you know what? 20 years ago, when this movie came out, I was sitting with a bunch of friends. One of them said that the sisters, then brothers, were yeshiva buchers. And for me, that became like a thing.
Part of the story.
Fact.
Yeah.
And she never fact-checked that assumption. And first of all, I really appreciated the way she owned it and went. Yeah,
that's impressive. Yeah,
absolutely. Impressive. But I think that, and a lot of people don't own their mistakes.
No.
I can think about a lot of examples like that. But I think that today it becomes so hard to differentiate between real data and fake data, because the fake is so easy today. If I want to create a whole digital persona, it would take me.
You can do it.
An hour.
You can do it.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
So it is very scary, to be honest. And going back to social engineering, I think that phishing still remains to this day one of the most common techniques of social engineering. I'm sure you have loads of stories and examples of very sophisticated phishing attacks. Can you share something that you've encountered recently that can maybe help our listeners?
Yeah. So there's a new extortion scam going on right now in the States, and I'm not sure if it's global yet. But they're taking this breach data, right? So there's so much breach data out there that contains, let's say, my name and my address. And they're Google mapping my address and Street View, and they're getting a picture of my house. And they send me this email that says, we've hacked into your computers, we have video and proof that you've been doing horrible things, and we're gonna out it to all your contacts. And here's proof. Here's a picture of your home. Here's a picture of your front door. We're in the neighborhood. We know where you are, and you're gonna transfer X amount of Bitcoin. A few $1,000s is what they ask for. So they don't make it huge. And they say a few $1,000s worth of Bitcoin to this address, or we're going to release this. And, like someone like you and I, we would get that and be like, yeah, whatever. Okay, first of all, I know I'm not doing anything horrible at my house. So you don't have video of anything. Even if you do, the worst thing you have is me with no shirt on. Oops, that's terrible, right? But the people that don't know that this is a scam, right? They get this and instantaneous fear. I mean, imagine you're a young single woman living in your apartment. All of a sudden, this pops up and if someone's got a picture of your house, that fear strikes. You want to fix it. You don't want this to get released, so you'll do anything. That's been a big one going around right now. We've been seeing a lot of that. Thousands of people falling for it.
Yeah, that's the next level of sextortion, of targeted sextortion. And unfortunately, I've seen it in various parts of the world, not with Google Photos yet, but I've seen them actually targeting very closed communities.
Yeah.
Either ultra-Orthodox or very traditional communities, doesn't matter which ones. And it's a big deal because let's say you hack into my computer, you see what I do online. Okay, you tell it to everyone. It might be embarrassing,
right? But
it's not life-threatening. Yeah. But in some communities, it is.
And they've been using AI to generate nudes of some of those teens that are in those communities, and then saying we're going to post this to your community.
Oh,
and they're asking them to go steal money from their parents, get credit card, this or that. In the States, there's been 28 suicides in the recent times due to this attack.
It's crazy. And that it's crazy. And that's the advancement of AI. Because I think it's probably about 4 years ago, I have to ask one of my colleagues when we actually had a whole study made about creating deep fake nude photos and how easy it is. And at the time, we had to use multiple computers and run it and pay money and everything. And it wasn't, but the results were absolutely super, super realistic.
Yeah.
Today, I can create it within 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So I think it is getting very frustrating. The question is, as someone who's been teaching security awareness and social engineering and everything, how can we teach that? How can we teach the general population to identify those risks?
So here's an issue. There's not a tell anymore, right? So what I tell my kids, what I tell my family, is if you can't verify something, then do not trust it. So my daughter, very smart, she goes, well, what if I see a video online about the president saying something? I said, can you verify it? She goes, well, how would I verify it? I go, is it on whitehouse.gov? Is it on official channels? She goes, oh, okay. I said, and if it's not, then don't trust it, right? If you get a picture of one of your friends or audio, they're saying something about you, can you verify that it's true? If not, don't trust it, right? If you get a text message and it says it's me and I need you to meet me somewhere, if you can't verify it, don't trust it. Because right now there's absolutely no other way. There's no app I can put on your phone or your computer that says, ooh, that's AI, or that's a social engineering attack. So until we start using AI to defend against it, the only thing is now you have to verify and just don't trust anything.
And one of the things I've taught my kids is whenever they're on a conversation, for example, with me or their dad or someone, and they're not completely sure or something sounds a bit weird, ask something very personal that only I will know. And that is such an easy thing. Like actually, a couple of months ago, my son sends me a text message in the middle of the day. I just sent you a code for Blue Cat. Send it back to me. And I'm like, weird. Did they hack his phone? And then he calls me. Like, Mom, I sent you a code. Now, I do see the code. I'm like, Harry, why would you send it to my email? Oh, because I didn't have I sent it to your email because I once configured it on your I'm like, what? Like, I have this spam email that is for the whole family for all sorts of gadgets. I'm like, okay. And then I asked him something very personal. I asked him the name of his first judo instructor. And where did he take judo for the first time? Where was the location? I was like, why are you asking me that? And then in the evening, I actually showed him how I can generate from his voice and how I can generate the whole call. And he was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I started asking. Now, these are very simple questions. And yes, I will never use the judo question again. I always give it as an example.
Now it's dead.
But no, absolutely. But you know what? Even those old grammar questions, they work if it's very fast and whatever. For my son, it will take exactly a second to tell me who his judo instructor was. But for someone else, it will take time to find that data. Not because it's impossible to find, because it will take time.
Yeah.
So it will have to be. But I do think it's getting very difficult to trust things. We're growing a generation that will not trust anyone. And I don't know if that's where we want to see humanity going, but I think that's where we have to go.
With my daughter, what I did is I instituted a code word. And that code word is a word that we never use, and only her and I know it. So if she texts it to me or says it, that code word dies and we get a new one. But if she says it, I know it's her. And if I say it, she knows it's me. So we have that verification process. And your idea is excellent because I just read a story about Ferrari, my personal favorite car company, got saved from a massive hack because somebody called the CFO saying he was a CEO, needed a wire transfer done for a new investment. And the guy said, this sounds a little fishy. So he goes, hey, what was that book you recommended to me yesterday? The guy hung up. And he's like, it's because he asked them something deeply personal that they would only have known between each other. And that deep faked voice, the guy just hung up. Couldn't conclude. So I think it's a genius idea.
Thank you. At the end of the day, it's behavior. The only way to tackle it is behavioral change. We know that malicious attackers usually exploit human weaknesses, human traits. What are some of the most common psychological tactics you see cybercriminals using today?
Okay, number one is fear. And fear is the biggest one because there's a part of our brains called the amygdala. They're two little walnut-sized pieces of gray matter in the brain. Their purpose is to take all external stimuli, and it creates psychological and physiological change based on previous experience, right? So you're deathly afraid of snakes. You see a snake, what happens? You reel out in fear because you're afraid of snakes. So when that happens, the guy who did the original research, his name is Dr. Daniel Goleman, he found out that the frontal cortex is completely dark. And all of our processing power is in those amygdala centers, which means that the very next decision you make when you're hijacked is going to be based on emotion. So threat actors may not understand the neuroscience, but they know that when I create a tense fear in you, then your next decision is going to be terrible, right? So fear is one of the largest we see. Then we see that they jump to the other side, like romance scams. So like lust or the desire to be loved or wanted. Those things are. Ooh, sorry about that. Do you edit?
Oh, that's the dog.
That's my dog. Yeah, can you
That's
hear
a
that?
big dog. What dog?
So, it's an English Mastiff, and he's 175 pounds.
Oh, I love big dogs.
Yeah, he's
I'm
huge.
a German Shepherd person.
Yeah. He's huge. Okay, so sorry about that editing thing. So then they move over to the things like love and lust and those, because those work really well even on older folks. We see romance scams happening so much there, right? And then we'll move over to other things like anger, right? People get angry today. The world makes people angry. The scene in the world makes people angry, and you can get people committed to a cause by inciting that anger, and then they make poor decisions. When you see injustice in the world, and maybe you can do something about it, it builds that anger in you. And we see attackers using this. You think about something like, there's a catastrophe somewhere, and the war in Israel, Gaza right now, what's happening, right? There have been scam charities raising money
within
for both
hours.
sides. Within hours on both sides, right? So you're angry about what's happening over there. I want to do something, and now here comes this email saying, "Hey, help us support X, whatever side it is," right? And you're like, "Oh yes, I want to do that," and you start putting money because they take that emotional response and they get it. So you think you're doing something righteous, and you're getting scammed. So those are the common ones I see.
I also see a lot of greed-related scams.
Oh man.
So many of them. So many one-time offer, limited time offer, whatever, special.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable that people, smart people, educated people, fall victim to that all the time. I've just seen another one. A friend of mine sent me an engineer, someone who's super technical, been in technology all his adult life, and he sent it to all of our friends. Look what a great deal I just found on And people were like, "Oh wow, that's so amazing." And I'm like, no.
No.
Not that amazing. Not that. But unfortunately, a lot of people, when they don't know those scams and they've never seen them, it's super easy to fall victim. I say that any person can fall victim, especially with there are so many new trends now that it's super hard. The first time you see it, even as a professional, the first time I see a new scam, it's very hard to be sure. I actually found myself in the Philippines this summer because I saw this ad and I was so convinced it was a scam that I spend the next hour researching the website, researching the ads, researching everything until I said, that's actually a great deal, and it's not a scam, it's a great deal. So I found myself in the Philippines. But it started from my being completely convinced that this is a scam because it seemed too good to be true, and usually it is. I want to go back to your professional side, and we know that today, according to researchers, between 85 and 95% of all breaches involve the human factor. However, we also know that about 85 to 95% of cyber efforts are focused on the tech side. As someone who's been focused on the behavioral side, the human side, how do you overcome this equation?
Boy, if I had the answer to that, we'd probably be doing this interview from my private island, right? I'd fly you in on my private jet and we could just do the interview in person, right?
Exactly.
I'll tell you, it's been a lot of work to show companies that the human factor can't be 100% fixed by technical. So I'm one of those people that says you need both, right? You need your firewalls, you need your IPS, you need your IDS, you need your antivirus, but you also need real-world education and training, security awareness, not those 20-minute CBTs, hour-long, that do nothing. You need real-world training to get your people, so that way the technical stuff is stopping that, 99% of viruses, but that 1% that's going to get through because it's ransomware, they're going to catch it, right? So it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of, I think, giving speeches, writing books, talking about it, writing on LinkedIn, letting people know that you can't fix these problems with technical results. And I see a slow shift. Right? One of the things we do here is we do human-to-human phishing calls as part of our security awareness, and we go back 7 or 8 years. We had a couple clients doing it, and now I think 99% of our work is phishing related. So people are seeing people are seeing like this is a big deal, and they need to step it up. So we do a lot of it. We do over 2,500 phishing calls a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can tell you that in the UAE, phishing is very popular, mostly impersonating things like Dubai police and calling you, I've got your Emirates ID, you need to verify your details or you'll be deported, things like that. And when you have 90% of the population here are expats from on all levels, it's a big deal, especially when you just come over, and they do it they really invest a lot of time and energy and effort in building those scams, and they give you your personal details, and you just have to verify the last 4 digits of your credit card or the CVV or whatever. And
is it money they're going for?
Mostly, yeah. Mostly, and identities, but mostly money, and they're very successful.
Yeah.
They're very successful. They're doing it all the time. Actually, this weekend, one of my friends got scammed. She was on her way to see us, and then she told me about it. I'm like, cancel your credit card. Let's start with canceling the credit card. And take it from there. And unfortunately, it happens all the time because people don't know it. Again, especially in a place like the UAE where people coming and going, they don't know. They don't have that historical background that they know what's going on in this region. They don't know. So,
it's an interesting thought, because one of the things that we do here at my company, because whenever I hire somebody new and they go on LinkedIn and they say, hey, I've started working for Social Engineer, 100% of the time they're going to get an email from me asking them to go get gift cards. It happens every time. Now, in all the years, I've only had one employee fall for it, right? But what we do is on the hiring process, the day you're hired, we say, hey, here's what's going to happen as soon as you change your LinkedIn. I promise it's not me, right? So, so I think along that line, it's like kind of, the responsibility falls on companies and the governments to kind of tell their citizens, like if I'm moving to UAE, to have like a little, packet that says, hey, here are some of the common attacks that are going to occur because you're a foreigner here, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That when I started the Think Safe Cyber community, originally, and to this day, I don't think some crazy cyber lady should have started this community. It has today over 25,000 members, and we have so many volunteers doing such wonderful work. Thank you. Really, they're doing amazing things. That's amazing. I started this community because no one else did. I was hoping the government would do it. I was hoping the Israeli National Cyber Directorate would do it, or someone else. I'm sorry, guys. I am calling you out on this. But to be honest,
hope doesn't get you anywhere. You have to do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. At some
Right?
point I said I can continue about it, then no one else is doing it, or I can do it myself. And I think it's similar to your nonprofit, to the Innocent Life Foundation, that instead of just sitting around saying, oh, someone should do something about it, you decided to do something about it. So can you share a little bit about the foundation and what you do there?
Yeah, and that's a really great description of it, because I realized at one point that I'm never going to quit my job and go work for law enforcement. You know, I like what I do. And my community has talents that law enforcement doesn't have, and it's not because they're bad or dumb. They don't have the ability to be trained. They don't have the money for training, right? So we can help them accomplish their job. So, and this all came about, I'm going to go back about 10 years. I was doing a job, and we were doing an internal pen test, a scan. We found a guy in the dark web. So I asked my point of contact, is there any reason why someone in this department would be in the dark web? I said, absolutely not. Can you tell us what he's doing? I'm like, well, it's Tor, so no, I can put a keylogger on his machine, though. So we did, and we found out that he was filming himself molesting little kids, and then he was trading the videos with other people on the dark web at work, because he had a shared computer at home, and he didn't want to get caught by his wife. I called the federal law enforcement here. We set up a sting. He got arrested. He'll be in prison for 150 years. And that felt amazingly empowering. Like, for the first time in my career, I was like, wait. I can do stuff that actually like saves people's lives, not just hack companies, right? And it felt unreal. I went to my lawyer and I said, hey, a lot of organizations focus on, saving the kids directly. I want to do something that no one else is doing. I want to focus on the predators. I want to hunt the predators and not do it the way we see on Facebook. Because I'm telling you right now in America, I don't know if you have it in Israel or whatever, but these people that go on Facebook and they make believe that they're a 13-year-old girl. They get the guy to come to a McDonald's and they beat him up. 89% of those cases get kicked out of court because you're not police. You're doing it wrong. So I said, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to use our skills in OSINT to find these people in the real world and then hand them over to law enforcement. And my lawyer said, well, you're going to be interacting with child abuse material, so you need to figure that out because that's illegal. You can't do undercover work because that's going to hurt your job. And, you're going to have a therapist because, anytime anyone volunteers, okay, let's figure that out. It took me about a year and a half to figure all of those things out. And then and 7 years ago, we launched it, and we are over 530 cases handed into law enforcement. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's really amazing. And my team, we scour the dark web. We go to these horrible forums. We have tools that blur things so we don't have to see any images. We find people who are producers of the material. And then we use OSINT and we geolocate them. We find out where they are, who they are, what their jobs are, what they look like. We can find out as much information as possible. We write a report, and then we get a hold of a law enforcement agency in the country that they're in, or we handle it right to one of the agencies in America, and then we move on to the next one. So it's been a kind of an amazing journey with that, really.
Absolutely inspiring, and I love that. I love that initiatives like this one and other initiatives that I've seen throughout the years really make an impact. I think that we can sit around again and wait for governments, or we can do things ourselves. And I really hope that people listening to us, especially professionals listening to us, think about how they can use their forces for the good. And it could be deliver a one-time security awareness talk in your kids' school, or volunteer to the Innocent Life Foundation, or anything else, anything that you're passionate about. But I think that each and every one of us, at the end of the day, we build this industry, we sort of build the problem, we need to also try and help build the solutions. So I absolutely love that. And you know what, I want to tackle that, because you teach, at the end of the day, you teach social engineering and you offer trainings. How do you make sure that what you teach remains, let's call it, in the ethical realm?
Yeah, I love that question. So we have a code of conduct that we wrote, and it's on our website, that our mantra here at Social Engineer is leave them feeling better for having met you, right? So when I'm teaching my clients and I'm doing, like, let's say the phishing work, we don't use fear-based pretexts. We don't use anger. We don't use sexual or lust-based pretexts. We don't use greed, because those make someone feel shame and bad when they're done, right? So if I have one of my female employees flirt with the guy on the phone, when he finds out it was a test from his company, he's going to feel bad. He's going to feel ashamed. Oh man, did I do something wrong in my marriage, right? If we use fear, oh, you're about to get fired if you don't do this. I don't know where that person is. What if they're at their last wit? They have no money in the bank. They're depressed or thinking of ending it, and now they think they're actually going to get fired, right? If I use anger, when they find out that it was a company-based test and I used, actual real anger to get them involved in a scam, they're going to be angry at their company. So our job as the professional is now, do those things work? Yes, they work perfect from social engineers. But my job is to train the person, and I can't have you trained if you feel bad about me. So if you say to me, hey, I want to learn how to fight, Chris, show me how to fight, and I come and I just punch you in the face, you're like, what the heck? You don't want to learn from me now. I'm a jerk, right? So we don't punch our clients in the face. We stay above that line, and we don't use fear-based pretext. And this is not common in our industry. If I heard an interview of somebody who does red teaming, and they were bragging about how during COVID they used wearing a gas mask to breach a building because they just told people they had COVID and everyone stayed away. Imagine that fear. I mean, millions of people globally are dying from this virus, and now you use that to hack a building. It's not an ethical way of handling social engineering. So when I teach it, I teach from that standpoint, right? And then when I do it, I use that standpoint. And the only time I don't is at the ILF when we're hunting child predators. I don't care how they feel. So, not that we do anything unethical, but their being happy at the end of the day is not my goal. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's very challenging. I think for yourself, for me as well as an educator, making sure that the people I teach don't go later on and use the skills that I taught them to cause harm. And it's when I was teaching, when I was working for a company and we were teaching penetration testing. So you basically teach people how to hack.
Yeah.
And you hope that they'll take it and become penetration testers, but they might become black hats as well.
Yeah.
And it's always a challenge trying to identify those potential wrongdoers.
Yeah, it is. And I think the problem is you can't, it's kind of like a knife company. They make a beautiful knife. They want you to take it in the kitchen and use it to make food. Somebody uses it as a murder weapon. It's not their fault, right?
Exactly.
So when I teach, I always teach it from an ethical standpoint in the hope that the people sitting there will hear that message and not want to go use it for bad. Now, sadly, I've had some students that later on I've heard that they have used it unethically and they've done things that harmed other people, and it always makes me feel bad. But at the end of the day, I'm also like, I didn't teach you to do that. I taught you to use this as an ethical, kind of like what you do with your kids. What I do with my kids. I taught my kids these skills, but I said you never ever use this to hurt somebody. It should always be a two-way advantage. That's a good social engineer.
I love that. I love that. We're coming towards the end of the show, and before we end, I want to ask you a few questions about, I'll call it mindset, if we'll give it a title. Well, you set up a successful business, and you set up a successful foundation, and starting, I think any entrepreneur will say the same. It takes a lot of energy, and you have to take a lot of challenges throughout your road as an entrepreneur. I want to ask you a little bit about the biggest challenges you faced getting the company from where it was to where it is today.
When I started this in 2010, social engineering still was not on the tip of everyone's tongues. So convincing a company to spend less money on their firewall and take some of that budget to do phishing or vishing training was difficult. It was very difficult to convince companies of the importance of this. I had companies that say, but you're always going to be successful, so why even test? And it's like, wow, that's like saying, well, we're all going to die. Question. Yeah, yeah. But I would say to them, we're all going to die someday, so should you just not exercise, not take care of yourself? We still have to stay healthy, even though we know that someday we are going to not live forever, right? So, it is a good question, but it's the same as like saying, well, now if you look today, like let's jump forward, the amount of breaches, right? So I don't know if it's news over in Israel, but the National Public Database here in the U.S. that got breached 2.9 billion records. One of their accounts was admin with the password of password, right? So in 2024, why is it that we're still trying to educate companies that is stupid? Right? It's stupid. And why are we letting companies get away with that? Right? We shouldn't be. So I'd say the hardest challenge is making those behavioral changes, finding companies that take it seriously. Because being small, one of the things I loved is I was able to not have to worry about taking every job that comes in. I can be picky and choosy, right? So if a company looks like they're here just to do compliance, or they have punitive results for our testing, I don't want to work with you, right? So we get to find companies that really care about security. And that feels good, but that was a big challenge in the beginning. People have us, CISOs are given a budget. So here's your X money, and they got to figure out how to spend it. And for a long time, they did not want to spend it with us. So it took
absolutely.
a while.
I think at the end of the day, it's very hard to measure, for example, a social engineering test.
Yes.
It's much easier to just take a phishing simulation tool and say, oh, we were at X% now, we're in Y%, look at us. Yay, us.
Uh-huh.
The question is, does it actually represent what they'll tackle in the real world?
Yeah.
You've been sharing a lot of your experience and knowledge and you mentioned that on LinkedIn, on your books, on your podcast that I absolutely love. It became such a valuable resource in this industry. I think all of the things that you do. And I want to ask you, being an entrepreneur, obviously you're busy. You have a lot of things going on. You have a business, you have a foundation, you have family, you have kids. What inspired you to start this podcast, to share your experience and not just keep everything to yourself?
One of the things I learned from Matty was because if you remember when he was creating Backtrack, that was a free project. And he says, when you give knowledge out for free, he would tell me, people will always see you as the expert. So I think so many people are focused on making money on everything they do that if they're not getting paid for it, then I don't want to do it. And what I have found through my career is that mentoring people, giving that knowledge out with no expectation of anything in return, spending time helping others in the industry, that had large rewards. And I didn't know it would, but it had large rewards in that, my career did take off and I was able to build a foundation and have 50 volunteers, working for it. My team right now is some of the best people on the planet doing this work, and they all have the same moral mindset. That didn't just happen all at once. That came through that effort of just kind of saying, you know what? People would say to me, we would write a report for a client. We do our OSINT, and I actually put the literal Google string that we use to find the data. And I had someone say, but why are we doing that? We're teaching the client how to do our job. And I'm like, in the 14 years of running this company, I've never had a client say, hey, we don't need you next year because you had such a good report. Never happened. When I find that when I give the clients everything of myself and knowledge, that they're more likely to go, we really want this guy. Like he values us. So I know that's what inspires me and motivates me, I think, is just, it's rewarding. This job is rewarding when you get to see things happen. People get better, companies get better. And with the nonprofit, that's rewarding beyond all belief because you're saving kids and stopping predators. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think you're very fortunate in that regards. Though you said something very inspiring to me before we started this conversation about definitions and what defines it and what doesn't. Remember what it was?
Yes, let me see if I can recall it as good as I said it the first time, because sometimes you say smart things and they never come out the right way again. I think another thing that I've learned through the years is that a lot of people define their success by how much money they make and their worth, their self-worth by how much money they make. But I've had years where I was really doing good financially, and I had years where I barely was scraping by, and that's even after starting this company. I've had a roller coaster. My value was never dependent on how much money was in my bank account. Is my family healthy and happy? Are my employees healthy and happy? Are we still doing the good work that we are doing and not adjusting our compass, our moral compass, because of the stress? If we can do that. That to me is success. It's not about a dollar figure.
Absolutely. I love that. So before we conclude this episode, as you know, I always finish this up with a short pop quiz. Short questions, short answers, whatever comes to mind. No right or wrong answers.
Okay.
So are you ready?
I hope.
No worries. It's just no worries. No grades.
As soon as you say test and quiz, now I have to have to be good.
True. So, what's the most unexpected place your cybersecurity journey took you to?
Oh, unexpected place. My cyber. I would say I was in Russia once, and that was really scary. That was an unexpected place to go. I won't do that again. But that was maybe one of the most unexpected places I was.
Nice. If you could swap roles with anyone in your organization for one day, who would that be and why?
Ooh, wow, that's a great question. I think I would swap roles with Jason. He's my VP of sales because he's a fascinating guy. And I would love to just live in his shoes for a minute because I'm not really great at sales. You would think I would be with social engineering, but I'd love to swap with him and see what it's like to be him for a day.
Cool. How do you celebrate your achievements?
For me, family. Family is always a big thing. I spend a lot of time with my family and food. I love food. So
yeah,
food's a great celebration. Yeah.
Absolutely. If you could have dinner with any cybersecurity pioneer or character, past or present, who would that be?
Steve Jobs.
Steve
100%.
Jobs. Oh,
Steve
that's
Jobs.
cool.
I would love to just pick his brain. It would have been amazing to just be able to sit and pick his brain. And I'd love to ask him, what do you think about Apple now? Because it's a completely different company. Completely different company than what he started.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
And last but not least, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone just starting out their career in cybersecurity?
Oh, yeah. Okay, I get this one a lot when I mentor people.
I know.
Get on LinkedIn and write your knowledge. And don't say, but I'm new, I don't have anything. Great. Write about your journey into cybersecurity. Write about what motivated you to leave whatever career you were at and do this. Write about what education you got. Just write. Share your experience because someone else out there will be like, ooh, I needed to hear that.
I love that. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. This was an absolute pleasure and inspiration. And I hope more people will get involved in the wonderful work that you're doing with Innocent Life Foundation and in general, talking about cybersecurity, talking about social engineering, teaching other people how to identify and protect themselves and their loved ones. I think at the end of the day, that's what we want to do.
Yeah. Thank you very much. This was fun.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. And I hope to see you all next time here on Cyber MAYnia.